We recognize that we are collective agents of history, and that history cannot be deleted like web pages.
And so today, I am very proud to designate it as America's newest national monument, the Belmont-Paul Women's Equality National Monument, right here in Washington, D.C. I want young girls and boys to come here 10, 20, 100 years from now to know that women fought for equality. It was not just given to them. I want them to come here and be astonished that there was ever a time when women could not vote.
So the 200-year-old house that's sitting on the corner of Constitution Avenue and 2nd Street Northeast, beginning in 1929, was the headquarters of the National Woman's Party, founded by Alice Paul. Alice Paul and the National Woman's Party were very deliberate about putting themselves right there in the thick of things. And one of their reasons for being there was to keep an eye on Congress and the issues of women's equality. The thing that people really know them for is their campaign to picket the White House. The first ones to do that, and really kind of popularizing what eventually becomes the modern sense of what it means to protest, what it means to demonstrate, and continuing that civil disobedience. Those are things that the National Women's Party really popularized. So one of the things that we did was to encourage parks all across the country to find the stories of women. It can be so easy to just assume that women weren't there. I know one of the scholars at the National Women's History Alliance said, you know, were people eating? Did they wear clothes? Women were there, you know? And so women are half of the population, and every single story about our history is a story of women. And it was amazing how many parks found those stories that were right there and weren't anywhere in their interpretation, in their exhibits, in their waysides.
The history of the women's uniform had already been written by Harpers Ferry Center in Bryce Workman's book. And so I thought this should be relatively easy to turn this into an online exhibit using the uniform as like the hook to talk about issues of equality for women in the National Park Service. I started, doing the research and recognized that there was so much wrong, not only history, but there was misinterpretation. There was a tendency on his part to be too forgiving of the Park Service's position towards some of these women. He glossed over a lot of these issues. Women have been in the Park Service since the beginning and have made contributions. There are so many more whose history have been totally forgotten, right? Because in the same way that history is written by the victors, in this case, the history's been written by the men. Talking about women's history and women writing and preparing their history and researching the history provides a whole new dynamic that is useful to both men and women as visitors in national parks.
You could kind of get the idea that, we get smarter over time, and equality shows up eventually. It works itself out. Things get better, and so far, at least, that has never been the way anything changes. It changes because people work at it and struggle and sacrifice and fight and face disappointment after defeat over and over again. And like in the case of the women's suffrage movement, the generation that started it didn't get to see it to the end. One of the reasons I love telling the story there is because when you see today things that need to change, that people will have a sense of, well, this is what it takes.